Hello, and welcome back to the Simplifiers podcast, where we take topics in business and in life and simplify them. And friends, I don't know about you, but it's really cold and miserable and rainy and gross where I am in the world, which is the United Kingdom. I would love to be basically anywhere besides here right now in this moment. Any place like, sunny skies in California, maybe even beautiful sunsets in New Mexico. And those are the moments where I personally get the itch of like, I gotta travel. Wouldn't it be cool if I could live anywhere in the world and work anywhere in the world as well? Well, I want to simplify that. My special guest today is Lis Hubert. She's a location-independent consultant, traveler, and a writer on a quest to live her best life. As she travels the world, she aims to better understand our shared human experience so that she can uncover the structures needed to make life the best it can be. She's got her own business. She's the co-founder of CX by Design, which is a consultancy where she exercises her passion to bring more humanity back to business by empowering curious companies to create meaningful customer connections. And yeah, by the way, she's a digital nomad as well. I'd like to welcome to the Simplifiers podcast, Lis Hubert. Hey, Lis.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's so great to be here.
So digital nomad totally is a buzzword of the last few years. And
yes.
Let's start first things first. How would you define the term digital nomad?
Right. I'm very glad you asked this question because, it's a term that can spark some different reactions in people. For me personally, a digital nomad is somebody who doesn't have a location that is permanent.
Yep.
So they're nomadic in a sense. They're traveling around, or maybe they just travel around. They do travel around, but it doesn't have to be every month or something. You just like to peruse and you work online.
Okay.
So something about your business is online.
So my sarcastic friend, I can hear him in the back of my head go, well, hang on, Mary. Isn't that just mean that she's homeless? How do you respond to that?
Right. I would say yes, friend.
Yes.
Do you have a problem with that? No. But I have been saying that. I've been getting a little down on myself after 2 years of this, which is, it's an interesting place to be. I think we all kind of go in and out of that.
Yeah.
But it's, I guess so. Really how I term it is how I like to talk about it is the term location independent.
Yeah.
Because I think we all were nomadic before we were a civilized culture kind of thing.
Right.
It's nothing wrong with it. And the people who are truly homeless and down on their luck, I'm of the thought that maybe we should help them.
Yeah. Well,
So I guess I'm homeless, but I have a lot more to be thankful for than many people who would turn themselves homeless.
Well, okay, so birds do it, right? They migrate to warmer weather in the winter and, go to the places where they will reproduce and mate, and then they go to the other places when it's nice. Like, I see the truths in this as I'm sitting in a very cold house in England right now in the dead of winter, which technically should be spring, but let's face it, it's not yet. Like, I see the truth in it. So how does it translate for you? Like, what does this look like in your day-to-day life? You do pet sitting and house sitting, right?
Right. I do a mix. I do a broad mix. So usually I don't want to say that. There's no usually. Usually is a construction that keeps us from living our best life.
Yeah.
So several times a year, I will pet sit. In fact, I just got back from a house sit that, so I'm currently in Washington State, about an hour east of Portland, Oregon, and the Columbia River Gorge. And so I was house sitting for friends since I used to live in this area before I went on the road. So I just returned yesterday. So let's say maybe 60 to 70% of the year, I'm pet sitting somewhere in the world, be that the United States, Poland, England.
Yeah.
Or the other 30%, I might be staying with friends, as I'm doing right now. I kind of taking a break from pet sitting. I'm staying with friends. Let's say the other 20 to 25%. And then 5 to 10% of the time, I'll just do short-term rentals via Airbnb, or I don't know, you have an extra room and you don't mind me staying there for some rent. I don't know, that kind of thing.
But see, this is the thing that intrigued me about your website. So her website is elizabethhubert.com. And by the way, you can find all these links in our show notes at thesimplifierspodcast.com so you can play along. So this is the thing that intrigued me. So on your website, you're like, free house sitting. Wherever you are in the world, go and travel, especially if you've got pets, travel worry-free, and I will come and maintain your home and care for your pets while you're away. Like, blew my mind. I'm like, hang on, wait. I can literally hire Liz to come to my house and pet sit the next time I take holiday or go on vacation for a couple weeks. What a genius way to set this offer up. Tell us more.
Right. Yeah, and I found this actually. A friend of mine found this when she was in between jobs, and she just needed a way to live comfortably without paying a lot of money in rent. And so she started pet sitting through there are several sites online. The most well-known is called Trusted House Sitters, but there are also very location-specific ones like House Sit Mexico and House Sitters America and those types of sites.
Yeah.
What I did this once after I learned this from my friend, another friend and I were road tripping down the West Coast, and we wanted to spend a week in the Bay Area. And we found a house sit where we were watching these two dogs for a week. We paid zero money to stay in the Bay Area for a week.
Yeah.
And we got to hang out with these two cool dogs, and of course it's not always like roses, and they're pets. They're, you're taking care of that. But what I also really valued was this equal exchange of good. Mm-hmm. I'm helping you travel and feel safe and take care of your loved ones and take care of your prized possessions. And you're giving me a safe place to live as I do that.
Yeah.
And work. So as long as you have Wi-Fi, I can run my business while not paying rent or mortgage. Right.
I mean, and that's the part that I just think it's so simple and beautiful and profound because, I think that when you hear about house sitters out there in the world, you just think, oh my God, there's no way I could afford that. That's so expensive. Or how could I trust somebody? But then the idea that you're doing this for free and also, they're getting a benefit, you're getting a benefit, everybody's a win-win, kind of moving into the kindness collective and currency of the world. It just makes perfect sense to me. But how do you get people to trust you? Like if there is no money being exchanged in a formal agreement, how does that work?
Yeah, it's very similar to being, a remote worker and getting people to hire me to redesign their website or help re-strategize their company, which is we'll do introduction phone calls or Skype sessions through different websites. You're able to, like for Trusted Houses, as an example, I have people go in and do references for me, and I think that site actually does background checks and that sort of thing. Yep. So. That's valid. Or I send people all my info. I'm like, here's my website, here's my LinkedIn, here's my whatever thing. Look me up. Mm-hmm. I want you to feel safe. So I think that sort of constant communication and very real and authentic communication is part of it.
Right.
A huge part of it.
Well, I mean, you're caring for our loved ones. My pet is certainly like an extension of our family.
Best friend.
Right? Yeah. There's that part. And then there's also the part of like, hey, yeah, my house has got a whole lot of stuff in it. I'd hate for Liz to come and, steal all my stuff. So, I imagine it takes a lot of trust. But then I also imagine, tell me if I'm wrong, you have you're building up a network, Sally and John in the Bay Area, when they leave again, they're going to be like, oh, well, let's call Liz. Let's figure it out.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a really big part of it. And part of it I didn't realize before going into this journey. But in fact, I have people who schedule their vacations around my availability, and they do so pretty well in advance. So last summer, a couple that I house sit for in Oakland in this awesome house, and I say awesome, like homey, comfortable house with this really great pet. They're like, hey, we're going to Italy for a month in March. Are you available? Sure. So that's happening much more now than new house sits, which is quite a relief because then the pets remember you as well. So,
well, and see, I'm trying to imagine this as a lifestyle. Like if I am staying someplace for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks at a time, doesn't it feel a little bit stressful or like makes my anxiety rise of like not knowing where I'm going to live next? How do you manage that?
Yeah, I think about this a lot. I think that because I have so little belongings or so few belongings,
Mm-hmm.
and I am traveling alone without children or a partner,
Right.
I think that takes a lot of the stress out of it. So I think a lot of that stress of like, where am I going to live next comes from where is my desk going to be? Where's
Mm-hmm.
my computer going to sit? Where's my, and all valid, right? Where's my child going to sit? I still get that sort of stress. Like right now, I have, after April 15th, I don't know where I'm going to live.
Mm.
I should figure that out, so but I can figure that out. Luckily, now that we're in this age of the internet and short-term rentals or friends or my network that I'm building through house sitting, where I'm getting to the point now where instead of feeling and having to manage that anxiety, in
Mm-hmm.
order to manage it, I just say I could always rent a hotel or Airbnb because I'm saving so much money that I have those means
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not talking about, renting a place at the Ritz, right?
Yeah.
But I still have the ability to do that, which I'm incredibly grateful for. And now going forward, this is new, by the way. So I feel like I'm externally processing live in real
It's
time,
fine.
but it's like, now I'm getting even more directive about it. So I'm like owning the
Yeah.
fact that I don't know where I'm going to live. And I'm
Yeah.
like, where do I want to live? Just like you opened the show with, where it's like, I was thinking that this morning, I'm like, I need to get to like, I don't know, the beach. What am I doing? Like,
Yeah.
this is cold in Washington State.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's being intentional, right? So I imagine if I was to do this, granted, it's a little bit harder because I do have kids, like you said, like it's
Right.
a pipe dream for me. But if I was a single person and, all the work that I do is literally on a laptop and completely remote, I would be gone. I would be doing that
Hmm.
thing is to make a list of all the places I would want to go to and travel. And funny thing is like Liz, people are going to hear this podcast. Who knows? They might go onto your website and book you up solid for the rest of this year. Done. Your anxiety
Please.
is gone. Right. But
Right.
it's, this is what's so amazing and wonderful and delightful about this as a concept. I mean, what
Right.
sparked you in the first place to leave your permanent address behind?
Well, in all honesty, it's not a very romantic thing that sparked it. It's actually a very entrepreneurial idea that sparked it. So your listeners will, I'm sure, relate.
Go
But
for
it
it.
just so happens I was living on Maui because I had rented a furnished place in Washington State when I left my New York City, which is a whole other tale. And the owners of that place were seasonal renters, and they said, "Hey, will you come stay in our place in Maui, and we'll charge you the same rent?" And I'm still living pretty much the same life, but on Maui, and I'm doing all my work with clients elsewhere.
Yeah.
And I have this friend who's house sitting and saving money. And then I hit a really hard business patch.
Mm,
And this is actually seasonal for my line of work. I think many consultants, it's a seasonal, it's a seasonal gig where towards the end of the year, people aren't hiring consultants. And
right.
then maybe March hits and people start hiring consultants again. And I'm hitting that time frame and I'm feeling this anxiety that I felt even though I've been in business for 8 years. It's
Yeah.
still the same anxiety. And I'm like, I do not want to feel this anymore.
Yeah.
What is my big, and that's how I found also the FIRE movement, which I can talk a little bit more about. But that stands for Financial Independence, Retire Early.
Mm-hmm.
And their advice was don't get rid of your fancy coffee every day. Get rid of or think about your fixed expenses every month, the biggest ones, and see if you can downgrade them.
Yeah.
And so that's when it was like, my biggest expense is rent. I don't need to be in this location. My kids aren't going to school. I'm going to save money.
So, okay, here's what I want to know. Do you have a car?
When I first started this journey, I did have a car. And because of that, I kept I was leasing a car.
Mm-hmm.
When I moved to the West Coast from New York, I decided to lease a car, also for business purposes. And then I was going to drive that to the end of my lease, basically.
Mm.
And so that's when I decided I would just do house sitting in the States, and I would just kind of go where I could with my car, and that determined my first, I want to say, year of house sitting.
Yeah. And
and travel.
did it work, or have you now ditched the car, and how are you getting from one place to another?
I ditched the car because that soon became my second biggest fixed expense, or my first biggest. Yeah, it's all It's all a pattern. It's all a program. And so I also don't drive a lot except to the grocery store or I don't go to work. I don't commute,
Right.
you know? So now how I get around is usually if I'm house sitting, people will leave their car or they'll like the couple I was talking about in Oakland, they leave the car. The couple I was house sitting for yesterday, I was using their car to get back and forth to the grocery store. But usually that's only necessary in the United States because most places, for instance, when I was house sitting in West Sussex, UK, or even in Warsaw, there was so much public transit or things were walkable in the villages that I didn't need a car.
Yeah, it's so true. And also Uber, Lyfts, all the things, you could probably do that as and when you need a transportation as well.
Exactly. And so like back to managing the anxiety of where I'm going to be next, that's part of it. Like I don't have a car. Like I could go anywhere, but wait, what will I drive? Now it's like, oh, I could just go to a city. I could always go to New York. I lived in New York for a while and I have friends and family there. So it's like, I could always go to New York. It's expensive, but at least my biggest expenses wouldn't be, I wouldn't have to incur them.
Right. So. Well, and I think that's really interesting because if you've lived in big cities like New York or London or wherever, you are already accustomed to living in tiny spaces with not a lot of stuff because you can't have a lot of stuff because you live in tiny spaces. You also live walkable to the market. You maybe shop every couple of days rather than doing some big Costco shop for the 2 weeks or whatever. I mean, it's just a different mentality of living, commuting, working. And like you say, I mean, if your business is online and all you need is to open a laptop and have strong Wi-Fi, your office is the place that you're house sitting in. So it's like all of this is like, well, of course this makes sense to me. So I want to go back to the FIRE movement. Tell us more about that because I've heard it a couple of times, but I'd love to introduce that concept to our listeners a bit more.
I'm happy to, but I do so with the caveat of much of the FIRE movement, at least the early FIRE movement that I found, is very targeted towards extremes, like extreme saving and extreme. I think twisted it for my own purposes, and I encourage all creative entrepreneurs to do the same because we're entrepreneurs and we don't always know what our income is going to be, maybe, or something like that. But the idea of the FIRE movement, from Lis Hubert's perspective, is, again, it stands for Financial Independent Retire Early. And the main concept is you figure out how much money do I need to live each year? And how much money do I need to, I guess, there's a math. I'm trying to think about how to say this so it's not super complex. So basically, you're trying to figure out how much money do I need to save in order to retire early. And there are tons of articles about coming up with that number. And then what do I need to do to save that money? And that's where then you start to break down your actual expenses and where you can start to save. Getting rid of debt is usually the first step. And once you do that, okay, how can you then decrease your expenses? And, there's this really great podcast, and I say this because I recognize that I am a single woman without children traveling on her own. But this is great podcast called Journey to Launch. And her name is Jamila, I think is her first name. And she's a mother of two, a married mother of two, who lives in Brooklyn, New York, who saved something like, I don't know, I think her number was like $80,000 in 1 year, her and her husband saved. And she brings on people who aren't necessarily tech workers, who have six-figure salaries, who are single, et cetera, living on ramen. Like she has real people. I don't want to say they're not real people. She has more relatable people or relatable people in these ways that come onto the show and talk about how to do it. And it's that idea of just really being intentional about what you spend and how you spend it and what you save and how you save it.
And so do you have a target for yourself? Like when you want to retire, what age is that?
I don't know that I have an age. I have a number.
Okay.
I know how much I need to retire. Actually, I do have an age. I just lied to you right here. I think 45 was what my hope was.
Wow. And so my parents are entrepreneurs. They're 76 and 78 at the time of recording this. And I literally think they are going to work till their dying day. So it's fascinating to me when I hear people that are like, yeah, I think I retire at 45. then what do you do after that? What is the vision post work?
It's a great question. And that's what I want to also talk about. For me, retirement isn't, I'm not working at all. Good. And when you start to explore this movement, actually, or the articles or the bloggers in this movement, a lot of them are working in some way after they retire.
Yeah.
But it's more a passion. Like I love what I do at Six by Design. I think our mission is something that I'm passionate about. Yeah. But I don't feel that crunch of like, oh, I have to get the next client, or, oh, I have to take this ugly, whatever type of client that I don't want because I need to make sure rent, or I don't want to feel that every day. So to me, living in a space like that is retirement. I should also say where my investments or my income, my main source of income.
Yeah. Well, it makes a lot of sense then. So then tell me, what are some key skills that you need to have in order to make this lifestyle work? What's your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think, oh God, I was about to get really soft skill with it. I was going to go there. I'm going there.
Go for it.
But I think the first skill set to cultivate is really awareness about things. And that's very hard because a lot of us have, especially as entrepreneurs, we have busy lives and we're juggling a million things. But even just stopping and asking myself the question of, what am I doing? Or why did I just do that?
Yeah.
Or is me doing that still adding to my life? So I think having this kind of awareness that comes from inquisitiveness is a good one. But I'm not going to lie, it takes a lot of discipline.
Yeah.
Like it takes a lot of discipline especially because I'm moving from place to place to place. And I see a lot, especially when I stay with friends, they're like, wow, you're pretty disciplined with your routine.
Yeah.
And I'm like, my routine is all I have.
Yeah.
And I don't say that out of desperation. I'm grateful for it, but it's more like if I don't get up and do yoga and then journal and then eat breakfast, I'm lost.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't even know what country I'm in.
Yeah. See, it sounds like you really are intentional about taking good care of yourself, nourishing yourself, all of that. But I'm also imagining here, Liz, like if you don't have a car, then you're literally got a couple of suitcases and a backpack and a laptop bag,
right.
and that's it. Like those are all of your things. Do you ever go back to a home base and change out some clothes or get some more supplies, or how does that work?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I have a backpack, a carry-on roller bag, and my laptop bag.
And that's it.
That's it.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So I appreciate you saying that, by the way.
Yeah.
So people are like, really? But I do have, I should say, a few summer clothes that I left in Oakland last summer, just because I knew I was coming back for the Italy thing, for them going to their Italy trip. So I left a few things there and they were cool with that.
Yep.
But most of the time, this is my latest. I'm smiling for those who can't see the video because this is my latest scheme, which is I do a lot of thrift store shopping and thrift store donating. So instead of carrying around clothes that I don't need during the summer months, or if I'm it's winter, but I'm in Maui, I would donate what I'm not using and then go to the thrift shop and get summer clothes for $10 or whatever.
I love it. And again, I mean, it's the ultimate form of simplicity in such a beautiful way, in my opinion, that I am sitting here thinking, I do like to simplify, but there are clothes in my closet that I have such sentimental value to that it would be hard to let go of that, to actually simplify down to a carry-on bag, a laptop bag, and a backpack. It would take a lot to get there.
And I to be fair, that's not what I initially did. So initially I had a car.
Yeah.
So
which you probably had stuff in, right?
Right. So it took me a solid 8 months to a year to start. And again, that awareness and inquisitiveness. What am I really using out of the car? What do I really need? Do I really need this? It's like, I'm like laughing at myself, but I had some really hard moments with material things because like you said, they had sentimental value. So what do I do with that? And I'm lucky enough that my parents still live in the house where I grew up in upstate New York. So some of the books that I wanted to keep and those sorts of things, I had shipped there and they're holding them for me, which is great, but that's maybe a box of really sentimental stuff. But it's, again, if I could say like one thing it's that to simplify everything is asking myself, what really makes my life worthwhile?
Yeah. And you were saying before we recorded that also being inquisitive and having some awareness between the empty space in between what we do, whether that's work
Yeah.
or the things that we have. Tell me more about what you mean by that.
Yeah, I think that we as a culture, I want to say Western cultures, it's very go, go, go. And especially, and I say this more from, I don't have the experience, but especially from parents and married couples, and like your kids are doing a million things. And like, how do you even, like, yeah, Liz, this is great. You're telling me this, but
Yeah.
like my kid has to get to soccer practice.
Yeah.
I don't know what to tell you. And that's fair, not, that's more than fair. That's reality. That's their reality, your reality. But it doesn't hurt while you're driving to soccer practice to ask yourself, how was my day?
Yeah.
How is my son or daughter's day? How do I feel about their day?
Yeah.
And it could be just in those moments that are in between the big events of like making the appointment or writing the SOW or whatever. It's more just like what's happening right now. And I get it. In those moments, we don't want to be actively thinking because we're so on in all the other moments. But I would encourage, and what I've learned a lot from being alone a lot, like, and I say that like just if I don't have a car, sometimes I can't get places, and I just have to sit and think. It doesn't have to be super active. It can just be this gentle questioning of like, how do I feel right now?
Yeah. Yeah.
Without judgment. If you feel bad, that's okay. If you feel good, that's okay. But just asking yourself, I think, is a big step.
So, yeah, I mean, and I think what you're saying there, or how I translate this, is if you're living in a 4,000 square foot home deep under water in debt and you are filling the house with stuff because that's what everybody thinks that you should be doing, but you're like, ugh, this feels too much, or I'm not happy, or this is killing our relationship, or whatever it might be. I think what I hear there is to give yourself permission to step out of it and go, is this still relevant? Is this still what we want?
Right.
Is this still important to us? And that's where the beauty of simplifying is. I'll tell you a quick story. So in 2014, we relocated from Austin, Texas to Nottingham, England. And we were case in point that exact thing. We moved here because my husband's mother was not so well health-wise. And so we made the big leap to change our whole life and move across the planet. But we were that person, especially in Texas. Big old wide spaces, 20-foot tall ceilings. I think it was easily a 2,800 square foot house, brand new build, the whole thing, right? We moved into a house that was 900 square feet. So to be able to go, and by the way, we have 2 kids as well. So to go from that big of a space to that small of a space, what took a lot of paring down and simplifying and doing exactly what you say of like looking at every single piece of our life and go, is this still providing us value? And is this important to take with us to England? 90% of our stuff didn't come because it makes no sense to bring a dining table over or a cooking, like a saute pan or any of that. We gave away so much stuff to our friends in Texas when we left. And then when we got here, started to rebuild slowly and surely. What that taught me in that experience, was super scary to get rid of your stuff. Like,
so scary.
Ridiculously scary, right? And everything is like, oh, I don't want to give this away. I really love this cutting board, or I really love this blah, 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 whatever. But you start to realize you don't need all the stuff. That's the bottom line. When we pared down, we go, oh, okay. And then every now and again, we still, do a spring clean every few months or so. And we go, oh, how did we collect so much stuff? Because that's just how life is. Especially if you have kids. They just are stuff magnets. They bring stuff into your house every single day. But yeah, the bottom line is you just don't need as much as you think you might need.
Right. And I don't know if this happened with you during that experience, but what I found by paying attention to the space in between things, was that weight there's a weight, an energetic weight up to that stuff. And once that's gone, when I sit back and I've gone through the scary part, I've gone through the separation anxiety part of it or whatever. It's like there's almost like this, I want to use the word bliss that's kind of starts bubbling up in me. Doesn't mean it's forever, but it's a beautiful, the kind of like, I did that and I did that for the right reasons. And we're better off for it for right now. And that's a really cool thing.
Yeah. Well,
you know?
Life feels lighter when you're not bogged down with all the stuff or all the weight of debt or a very expensive house mortgage or all the things that come with that as well. So I'm curious also though, but when you move, like say every month or every 6 weeks, how do you continue to plug into the local community? Like, how do you feel connected? Because I'm an extrovert. I get energized when I'm around people. I could see that if I was moving to a new city every single 4 to 6 weeks, it could get potentially very isolating. How do you squash that?
Well, in the beginning, that was the point. To be honest, was to isolate, so I could go inward. Yeah. And there was a lot of self-work that I've been doing and I wanted to do. And then there's a few things, right? The first part is if I'm sitting a dog, it's going to sound silly, but I walk that dog. Like that dog's never seen walks like the walks we're going on. We're going to see this neighborhood. We're going to see this community. And that helps me really get a good feel for the place where I'm in, whether that's abroad or here. Even in the town that I was just house sitting in that I lived across from for 2 years, at 5 minutes away from, I never explored it in the same way. So that's one way that I kind of ground in. And then because of the self-work that I talked about, and even just the inquisitiveness of like, what do I like? What don't I like? I started to come up with a list of things that really fill my cup. I love poetry. I love live music. I love art. I love whatever those things, right? And then I'll start looking for those things. I'll go alone sometimes, or sometimes, couch surfing is a site that people may have heard of for people who you can stay on my couch or in my spare room for a couple nights. Yeah. But they also do events. So, if I'm going to a city, I'll say on couch surfing, I'm going to a city and I'll have people who are hosts, see that I'm going to be in their city and they'll reach out and say, hey, come over for dinner, or hey, let's go grab a drink or whatever. So I've started to cultivate those sort of communities that are for travelers. I've also started to recognize the places where the things I like to do happen, yoga studios, whatever. And I've also just embraced that I need time alone. It doesn't have to be months or weeks, but that's okay. And I think that's the other side of it where, especially as women, we're taught that being alone is a shameful thing. Yeah. Or you're not worthy if nobody wants to be around you. And that's not what is happening all the time. Yeah. A lot of times you're just alone, and that's okay.
And it's okay. So, imagine what a monumental breakthrough of a thought, right. But it's so true. And I imagine also as a woman traveling alone, you've probably had lots of experience that builds your self-confidence as well, right?
A ton. Like if people ask me what's the biggest thing I've learned, it's self-efficacy, that I can pretty much do anything. Of course I'm going to need support and help from others. I'm not a superhero, but I did a road trip alone from Albuquerque, New Mexico to Oakland. And I purposely drove through pretty not populated areas. And I stayed in like little motels and places that you were like, wow, I'm a woman traveling alone. I shouldn't do this thing, but I did it. I just met the most awesome people. Yeah, because I went into it with this this energy of like, this is my country. 1, 2, I'm just a person and you're just a person, and every person's then out to hurt me just because I'm a female traveling alone. In fact, most people are not out to hurt me. Yeah. So,
and it restores your faith in humanity and restores your self-belief of being able to, like you say, like figure it out on your own. Oh, Liz, I am so glad that you're on the podcast because I'm sure there's lots of people that have been jotting down lots of notes and are like, oh, this is very intriguing. What if this is a possibility for me? So I encourage everybody, check out her website. It's ElizabethHubert.com. That's Elizabeth with an S. Again, you can go to our show notes to find the link and get connected with her that way. And, if you're looking for a house sitter or a pet sitter, I mean, like, here's your girl. Like, legit, there's your girl right there. She's not going to steal your stuff. She's going to take your dogs on.
I have not stole anything things.
And she's going to take your dog on amazing, epic walks. But then also check out her website because she's a UX product and experience design consultant. So, hey, on the website side, she might be able to help you as well. If you're building an app or a website, this might be your girl also. Or last and not least, if you're thinking about becoming a location independent person, digital nomad, whatever you want to call it, maybe it's just curious to take a look at her website and how she structures that as well. So, Lis, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I've got a couple of questions I want to ask you that I like to ask everybody. First and foremost, what's one book or blog that you're reading these days that you just feel is either inspiring you or poking holes and challenging your belief system?
Yeah, I this one's a little bit was a funny one that I was, should I mention this one? But I think it would be great for any entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And it's a book that's, I think, a little bit old school, but it's called Crucial Conversations. And there are several authors, but the first that comes to mind is Carrie Patterson. But I think she has three co-authors. And basically it talks about how to be better at having conversations that are emotional, where stakes run high and where your opinions with another person differ. And this is good for business, for your home. And they have examples in the book that are really like just in depth for both like married partners and business partners. And I think it's a book that's changed my perspective on how I communicate with others for sure.
Very cool. I've not heard about that book yet. So I'll put the link in the show notes for people so you guys can check that out. Tell us, who's one person in your network that you just feel is up to brilliant things that we could shine a spotlight on? And who knows, maybe one day we'll have them on the podcast.
I was thinking about this a lot because I wanted to find the woman who was kind of somewhat my opposite, but also to inspire those mothers and wives among us. And the woman that I want to recommend that we all shine a little spotlight on, her name is Carol Clegg. Okay. She is my dear friend. I also house sit for her. She has 2 lovely horses and 2 cats whom I house sit. And she is a South African native who raised her children and lived with her husband on a sailboat in the Caribbean during the 90s and 2000s before the internet was really a thing. Wow. And she's currently doing retreats for female entrepreneurs who are interested in being location independent, but also just traveling like a local. So traveling while working and kind of figuring out that work-life balance and in getting inspiration from each other.
Very cool. Yeah. Well, we will definitely hook up with her. And again, we'll link her in the show notes so people can check her out as well. So I believe that gratitude and simplicity go hand in hand. Tell me, what's one thing that you are grateful for these days?
I am grateful for the amazing support system of friends and family who fuel me and keep me going. I travel alone a lot, but in reality, it feels like a million hands holding me up. Yeah. And I'm incredibly grateful for that.
Well, and I can also imagine you are meeting people literally all around the world. And how cool is that as an experience? And it may not be forever, right? Like it might just be a season, but just think of the experiences and the memories you're going to have from this season when, the alternative is you just sat at home and watched Netflix and, dreamed about it, but never actually took action and did it. So I think that takes a lot of courage and bravery. I'm really proud of you.
Thank you so much. That means a lot.
So, Lis, where can people connect with you online? Is there one social media account you like to be at?
Yeah, I would say that they could go to my Twitter account, which is Lis Hubert, but Lis spelled with an S, Lishubert, and reach out. I would love to answer anybody's questions or just chat with you. Or if you see that I'm going to be in your city, let's be friends and have a cup of coffee. So that would be awesome.
That's amazing. All right. Again, we'll put those links in the show notes for everybody. So Lis, my final question for you today is this. And again, thank you so much for your time and being so open and like talking about this. Like there's lots to it, but I think there's so much to it, which is really exciting for a lot of people listening. For sure. So someone somewhere is listening to this episode. She's like, wow, maybe maybe I could do this. I mean, I don't have kids and I don't have a dog, and I like dogs and I like to travel. But it's super scary. The idea of launching from her house or apartment, getting rid of most of her stuff or putting it into storage is really scary. What's one thing you could whisper into her ear right now just to encourage her in this moment?
Think to yourself, what's the worst that could happen? It's probably not as scary as you think.
And just do it.
And just do it.
Yeah.
And write that all out. Like really think, like, what is the worst that can happen? And write it. Let your brain get paranoid and crazy. And then take a step back from it and say, oh, I can handle that. Or if it really is too scary, what's not as scary?
Yeah.
That's along the same lines. But I think really looking at our fear instead of trying to skirt around it and just looking at it and seeing if we can handle it, I think is the first and biggest step.
Liz, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you for having me.